For more on migration to and from Europe, CCTV's Rochelle Akufo spoke to Demetrios Papademetriou. He's a distinguished senior fellow and president emeritus of the Migration Policy Institute. And Rochelle began by asking about why Europeans are increasingly leaving Europe and settling in Latin America.
The first one has to do with conditions in Europe, where many of these people come from. It's obvious that a place like Portugal and Spain that has suffered extraordinarily difficult times in the past 5 or 6 years, the most active, the better educated, the people who are risk takers, they would leave. And the places where they can speak the language or have ties, different types of ties, are all Latin America. That's part of it. The other part is that you do have an awful lot of opportunities in Latin America now. Not all across Latin America. Brazil, of course, leads the pack. To give you an example, there are 1,400 German companies that are actually settled, and they do business out of Brazil. And later on this month, the Chancellor of Germany, Frau Merkel, will be visiting Brazil to cut more deals. We know that wherever it is that she goes, the #1 priority is always to be the facilitator of economic opportunities for German companies.
Now, you mentioned Germany, and for the most part, when it comes to common ground, language-wise, culturally, you understand why more people from Spain and Portugal might be headed to Latin America, but you're also seeing France and Germany. What's the biggest attraction then?
Well, again, economic opportunities. These are countries that are very aggressive in terms of creating opportunities for their business sectors. They compete with each other for essentially the same markets, and everybody sees an opportunity when it comes to Brazil. Many of the other places are a little more difficult to make the case for, but things may be turning around for a number of smaller places in South America. And of course, Mexico is a big attraction, a big hub for corporations from all over the world.
And are there specific sectors that are perhaps the biggest draw for some of these countries?
Oh yes, electronics, electrical, cars, machinery. These are where the opportunities are. That's what will help these countries take off. And all of these European countries are more than eager to provide opportunities for these countries to take off because they can buy more of their products.
Now, we're going to shift gears slightly. We're going to be talking about the migrant crisis. The European Commission says it's the largest migration crisis that Europe has seen since the end of World War II. Now, Europe is stepping up its funding. There have been some issues as to who should be paying what and how much. What are your thoughts about their plan to give more aid?
Well, too little, too late. It sounds like an awful lot of money. European Commission is putting on the table about 2.5 billion euros. That sounds like a lot of money, but when you divide it among a large number of countries that are facing different scales of a crisis, and over the 7-year life of those monies, all of a sudden it becomes rather insignificant. Greece is coming apart. It has no infrastructure whatsoever, cannot even, take pictures or register people. Italy is the same thing. More and more people are now finding their way into Spain. So all of those things suggest that unless Europe finds a way so that the next wave of immigrants or asylum seekers is smaller than the previous wave, and they're not anywhere near that point, then we're going to see more of the same. More riots, more people complaining, a reaction to all of these asylum seekers, as we already see in Germany and elsewhere. So chaos is going to shift in a sense, or is going to be shared between the countries of origin, the countries of first asylum, in other words, the countries that are right next to the country that has a problem, and it's going to actually now be shared with Europe.
And as we look at some of the struggles that some of these countries have, so they're looking at that national responsibility, but also having to work with these other governments in other countries, and it really does speak to the cohesion of the European Union, which some say could be under threat, perhaps worse than what the European financial crisis caused.
I would actually say that unless Europe finds a way to actually reduce the numbers of people who are coming by being very careful in selecting who qualifies, who doesn't, perhaps doing some of the selecting outside of the continent, et cetera, this could very well be much larger, not just larger, than the economic crisis. At stake here will be even one of the most fundamental principles of the EU, which is the freedom of movement. And this is not just about Schengen, the area of 19 countries that have absolute freedom of movement, but it can include easily all 28 countries. So that's a serious issue.